I'm Kevin Harrington.
I'm Samba Bachili.
Nina Vaca, Chief Executive Officer of Pinnacle Group.
An original shark from the hit TV show Shark Tank.
CEO of ADS Group.
The largest Latina-owned workforce solutions in America.
I first identified myself as an entrepreneur when I was 15 years old.
My mother and father immigrated here with a suitcase and a dream. I had a front row seat to entrepreneurship. I am living proof of what is possible in this country.
Today, the marketplace is very tough.
The challenge for African market today is its access to capital.
The number one reason why we can't scale as entrepreneurs is access to capital.
What makes Glow so different and so powerful is the access to experts, gurus, mentors, coaches, financiers, venture people, money.
When I started my business, I immediately went to engage with different communities, different platforms. Glow makes that experience digital. A digital platform makes it so much faster and so much easier for you to meet like-minded people.
The financial platform that Glow have that make Glow unique.
Glow is about commerce, Glow is about community, and Glow is about having access to capital.
Glow is an asset to every entrepreneur in this country and globally.
It's about helping you take your business, your idea to the next step.
Hi there, and welcome to Business Acceleration 2.0. It's a show where leaders go to grow. It's brought to you by the Business Finishing School, an online program to help entrepreneurs grow their business so it becomes more profitable, scalable, sustainable, and sellable. It's also brought to you by the Global Leaders Organization, or GLOW as we call it. My name is Michelle Lemons-Picenti. I'm the CEO and founder of GLOW, and we're thrilled that you're here with us today. We've got an exciting guest with Mr. Byron Reese, but before we go to Byron, I'm going to cover just a little bit of housekeeping items. Number one, if you're watching us on social media, be sure to like and to subscribe to us. And that way you'll be notified of all of our upcoming events. Like next week, next Thursday, we have Pat Pearson here. And she's going to be talking about her book on self-sabotaging. So if you've self-sabotaged yourself, whether it be in business, in relationships, in your career, you want to make sure you're tuning in to hear Pat next week as we're going to go through the reasons why people do it and how to overcome that and get out of the self-sabotage. Also, if you've got a question for our guest today, be sure to put the question up into chat, and someone from GLOW, a staff member, will end up getting that question to me, and we'll get our guest, Byron Reese, today to answer that question. And then finally, if you are a premium member of GLOW, again, you will always be granted access into our VIP room. And yes, we will have our VIP room with Byron, where we'll be carrying on the conversation that we're having here today with Byron in the VIP room, kind of behind closed doors. We're not going to be recording, so you'll have a little bit more of an intimate conversation, which could be, it's always found itself to be very interesting. And if you're wondering, how do I get into the VIP room? Well, you have to be a member of GLOW, and at the premium level. The premium level actually gets you a membership into your chapter as well. So when you join GLOW, go to withglow.com and become a member at the premium level, and you'll always be granted access into the VIP room, plus a member into your chapter in your local city, and all sorts of other benefits. For example, you'll end up getting a discount on coming to our annual event, the big summit that we're doing, Leaders 50, recognizing the top 50 leaders from around the world on March 3rd through 6th in Dallas, Texas. Okay, so, oh, and one other thing. We're going to be carrying on this conversation again even tomorrow with our After Glow show with Aaron and Sia. So at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Central Time, tune in and go on to any of your social media sites, and you can tune in, or onto the GLOW site, and tune into the After Glow show with Sia and Aaron, and they're going to be carrying on this conversation that we're going to be talking about today with our guest, Byron Reese. So our guest today, Byron Reese, is known as a futurist. He has taken several companies to IPO level, had several exits. So he's not only an entrepreneur and a successful entrepreneur, he's also an author where he talks about the wonders of the future of what's going on with technology. He's also a speaker, and we're thrilled to have him here today. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest, Byron Reese. So Byron, thank you for being with us today, and welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I love that mic. Boy, you're a professional on this. Love it.
I love this mic too. It makes me feel like all legit.
All right. So for those of you that are tuning in right now, and you might not be aware of who Byron is, Byron, can you give everyone just a little bit of background about yourself so they can understand how you're sitting in the chair you're sitting today, talking about what we're going to be talking about?
Well, I grew up on a farm in East Texas and always was an entrepreneur. Married my college sweetheart, started my first company, and moved to the Bay Area to make my fortune. And I moved back fortuneless. And I started, and as you said, I've started some companies. I've had kind of a whole range of outcomes. Along the way, I started giving speeches and I noticed that there was a theme to them all about technology and what technology would do to the world. And so I started writing books about that. And so I write every morning from about 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then I have a company by day that I run from 8 a.m. to whenever.
Wow, busy man. I love the fact that you get up and write every morning. How can we read that writing? Where do we need to go? To your website?
Those are my books.
Oh.
I opened my big mouth once and said, how come Isaac Asimov got to publish like a book every week and I can only publish one every 2 years? So I signed it. I come out with one every 6 months now.
Wow.
So I have to write a book every 6 months.
Oh my gosh. Good grief, busy. Okay, so let's talk about one of your comments that I've heard you make, which is about failing and about the ego. And you talk about, as an entrepreneur, you're constantly really failing, and it's okay. And it's okay, by removing yourself, your ego from the business, it's okay to fail because that's how you're learning. But as entrepreneurs, we have so much of our ego in the business becomes who we are. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because, failing sometimes puts that cloud over us where we go, I don't know if people will believe me in the next thing I say, or they'll trust me with the next thing that I say I'm going to be doing. How do we get beyond that? You've spent some time talking and writing about that.
I feel like I fail more often, much more often than I succeed. And I wish there was a ha 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 kind of funny thing. But I mean, take that statement at face value. I really do feel that way. I think I'm successful in about 1 out of every 6 things I try. And I only am able to make that work by, making the failures relatively small and trying to make big successes. But early on, like if you fail that often and I don't even like that phrase because I don't actually feel like I am failing. Like it's more like that idea didn't work. And the reason that's really useful is when you do have success, it kicks in reverse. I mean, you don't start thinking you're all that. That one worked, that idea worked, and this other idea didn't work. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but I find it very freeing because it means my identity is not the success or failure of my company. My identity is something else entirely. And I want my company to be successful, and I work very hard at that. But when it is and when it isn't, that is not me.
So it's really more of a learning process. It's not failing. And you should really kind of maybe even take the word of failing out. That just didn't work. That whatever you were doing didn't work, but I learned, and I'm using that learning going forward, right, as part of, moving forward. And I guess really failing is if you stop, you quit, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's my only virtue is I don't give up. I just stick with it. Mm-hmm. It never feels good though. Like, don't think that. I mean, it's still, I would much rather succeed than not. So it's not that it feels good, but it doesn't become your identity.
Right. I think that's helpful for a lot of entrepreneurs listening. I think it's also helpful to know that, out of 6 things you try, 1 works. 6 fail, 1 works. So out of 7 things you try, 6 fail, 1 works. That's nice to hear that. Okay, so I want to go right to an article that was in the New York Times a couple of days ago, and it was regarding the pandemic. And I think this is really interesting because I know when the pandemic started, you immersed yourself and read almost every book you could find on past pandemics, right? And the article in the New York Times talked about how we really never get over a pandemic, we really just adjust to it. And you had a different belief or philosophy about pandemics, correct?
Right. I didn't see that article, but, and I don't like to disagree with the New York Times, but I would say my impression is just the opposite. I mean, it used to be parents wouldn't let their kids go swimming in the summer because they would get polio. They were worried about that. Then Jonas Salk comes along and nobody ever thinks about that again. You know, you used to have my mother had diphtheria, used to have all these worries about these horrible childhood illnesses like measles and mumps and rubella and all of that. And we don't. And smallpox, in this last century, smallpox killed more people than every war in history combined. And it was said you never thought of your children as your own until they had smallpox and recovered, because the chances of them dying from it were just so high. And so I would say just the opposite is that we forget very quickly what it was like. And we do go exactly back to the way things were. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to that, quite frankly.
So as a futurist, and we're going to be talking about, technology, because a lot of the companies that you've been involved with have been around technology and AI. And we're going to, as we dive deeper into that, I want to talk about a concern that, a lot of the public has about AI, because people believe that, with AI coming forward, we're losing a lot of jobs. And what's going to happen, right? Because we're losing so many jobs because things are becoming automated. You believe that we're going to be moving from more of a transactional into a relationship, right, type of society when it comes to work and career. What does that mean? Can we dive into that conversation a little bit?
Certainly. I mean, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the half-life of a job is. And I think it's 50 years. Or put another way, I think every 50 years, half of all jobs go away. I think it's been going on like that for 250 years. I mean, you can just think of all the things we don't have anymore. People to light boys to set up the bowling pins and elevator operators, and people to light the streetlights at night. I mean, people to deliver ice for your ice box. I mean, all of it. And every 50 years, we lose about half of it. I don't know that it's going any faster right now than it has before. But the dynamic of how it happens is it's always done through technology. And what happens is, imagine a stair step kind of thing of jobs. And you have jobs that are low pay, low skill on one end of that, and you have jobs that are high paid and high skilled on the other end. And what happens is technology destroys these jobs at the bottom, like an order taker at a fast food restaurant. And then it creates these new jobs, high skilled, high tech jobs, like a geneticist. And what people sometimes don't realize is the point isn't that somehow that fast food worker becomes a geneticist. What happens is everybody shifts up one notch. Mm-hmm. A college professor becomes a geneticist, and a high school biology teacher gets the college job all the way down. And so the question isn't, can people who are displaced do the new jobs? The question is, can everybody in this country do a job a little harder than the job they have now? And I think the answer to that's yes. And that's 250 years of how we can destroy half the jobs in this country every half century and still maintain largely full employment. Now, what I think you're alluding to is I do think that when technology destroys those jobs at the bottom, a lot of them are just kind of transactional types of things, like what technology is really take translation, language translation. Okay. Right now, there's a piece of technology that will translate an email kind of as well as a human. So what do you think that means for human translators? Well, it actually means we need a lot more of them, because when you can translate emails for free, then more people do business overseas, and then you need a translator to negotiate the contract and localize the product and have the phone conversation. So it becomes more of a relationship job. We now have Rocket Lawyer, or these these programs where you can do a basic legal stuff for free. Or for cheap? Does that mean we need fewer lawyers? No. In point of fact, now the lawyers have relationship jobs. They try to understand what it is you're trying to do and customize it for you. I'll do one more, which is like ATMs, automatic teller machines. Does that mean we don't have tellers anymore? No. Now the teller is a relationship job. The teller says, perhaps you would like to refinance your loan, or perhaps you need a loan for college or something like that. Mm-hmm. So what machines cannot do are these sorts of relationship things. And incidentally, any job that a machine could do, if you make a human do that job, we have a word for that, and that word is dehumanizing. So if a machine could do a job and you make a person do it, you're basically saying to the person, I know you're a person, but I just need you to pretend to be a machine and do this machine job. And those are the things technology is destroying and creating things that only humans can do.
Interesting. Okay, wait. I just want to go a little bit further. So let's go on the example of the food. Just, someone that's there taking an order at a fast food, and that's becoming so automated. You're saying that those individuals will now be given the opportunity to kind of up their game a bit for a better job. That's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what history says, is that I think about, like, we have self-driving cars are coming, right? And then I think to myself, well, that means self-driving lawnmowers are coming too. And there'll just be a lawnmower tootling around my yard mowing it. And then you think, well, what's going to happen to those people that mow yards? And then you say, well, all of a sudden now I will have an extra $40 a week because I don't have to pay somebody to mow my yard. And then I will think, I will spend that $40 on something else. That's what people do. And whatever I spend that $40 on creates new jobs. And maybe that would be, I want a grape arbor. I want grapes to grow in my backyard. And so all of a sudden I would say, okay, so somebody's going to start a business and hire out-of-work yard people to erect grape arbors. And then I'll be like, okay, I'll give you my $40 to make a grape arbor and maintain that. And that's what happens. See, if you went back 25 years ago to the internet, to when the internet, the Mosaic browser came out, and you showed somebody that browser and you say, hey, in the future, there are going to be billions of people using this. What do you think is going to happen to jobs? A particularly smart person would have said, I bet it's going to put the travel agents out of business, and the stockbrokers, and the newspapers, and the yellow pages, and the shopping malls. And you know what? They would have been right about everything. It decimated those industries. But what they would never have seen is eBay, Etsy, Twitter, Facebook, all these other things. And that's the problem. You can always see what technology is going to destroy. That's obvious. What it's going to create, none of us have the imagination to see that. And so it always looks like, oh my gosh, what are those order takers going to do?
Right.
And it's like, I don't know the answer to that. But we now have people who have more money, and they have more technology to multiply. I mean, there's more opportunity. If you think about it, on net, if you had grown up in a small town in some place and 100 years ago, I mean, your career prospects probably would have been to get a job at the sewer pipe factory that's the lifeblood of the town. Now, I can make this thing and sell it on Etsy, or I can go buy thrift store stuff and fix it up and put it on eBay, or I can do remote work, or you have all these opportunities technology creates. The last thing I'll say, the very short thing I'll say, is that the problem we're going to face is a shortage of humans. And I don't mean that to sound like clever or something. There are now more things that we could know how to do with technology than we have people to do. And so we have a shortage of people, and we will have an ever-increasing shortage of people.
Interesting. You've got a very optimistic viewpoint on the future. And that has to do with technology, which is refreshing, because you always hear the opposite, right? And I don't know if that's media just putting the scare in people. What skills do you see remaining relevant?
Well, I would say the most important thing, the single most important skill is the ability to teach yourself new things. The good news is all humans can do that. That's our superpower, is we can learn to do things we don't know how to do. Somebody can learn how to make grape arbors. Teaching a robot or a AI to do that, I mean, it's a Herculean effort. But I would say in a larger sense, if you imagine, I was talking about the low skill, low wage jobs and the high skill, high wage ones. I would suggest in general, people look at their own career like that and ask yourself, what are the things I'm doing in my day-to-day life that are the equivalent of taking orders at a fast food restaurant? And use technology to destroy that stuff that you're having to do. Thereby, and then say, well, where can I use technology to create new opportunities for me, like geneticists, like up there. And so if you're constantly applying technology, like, okay, I spend too much time maintaining my calendar, I spend too much time doing this or that, or like whatever's chewing up your day that you think, why am I having to do this? That's a great candidate to figure out how to use technology to destroy it, freeing you up to do higher value things that can make you more money because they employ more technology.
So on that same subject then, with AI, looking at your business, looking at your day and seeing where your time's getting sucked up, and maybe there could be some technology that could help you with that. So in that same theme, do you think, I mean, technology is pretty much everywhere. I mean, even if you create something and you want to sell it, you're going to sell it on Etsy, you said, right? Or so technology is a daily interaction with us today. Do you think companies in the future, all companies will end up having AI in some capacity within their company, and they should be thinking about that right now?
I mean, it is a technology that will be as ubiquitous as water, but that does not mean you need to worry about having to code in it or something. If you have a smartphone that has a doctor program, that can diagnose illness, if you use that program, you're like it's a superpower. You just add it. You don't have to learn anything other than how to use that program. A bunch of people spend a lot of time making that, and it has a bunch of AI in it. And so I would say, yes, more and more people's what technology does is it multiplies human ability. You can do more. A forklift lets you lift more than you can lift. I mean, all technology multiplies what people are able to do. So the more you can employ it, the more you're able to multiply your productivity. I don't work harder than my great-grandparents did, but I live a much more lavish life than they could have ever hoped to, because an hour of my labor yields so much more than an hour of theirs. I don't haul water up from a well. I just turn on a tap. And so as a general rule, businesses that deploy technology multiply what their workers are able to do and increase their productivity. And so I believe in kind of relentlessly trying to multiply what people are able to do. It doesn't mean you're an early adopter, and NASA doesn't use any technology that's like younger than 5 years or something like that, because once it's up in space, they kind of they don't want to find out that it needs an upgrade. And so there is something to that about being judicious about what you apply. But the mental effort of saying, where can I use technology to amplify human ability is, I think, kind of the way forward.
Is there do you go somewhere, or are there certain publications that you read on a regular basis? Because as an entrepreneur, how do I keep up, like with the new technologies, and just, is there a place that I should say, I need to go to that conference every year, or I need to be reading these certain publications? How do you keep up as an entrepreneur?
I don't have an answer to that question. I have no idea, because I struggle with it myself. I find all these things. It's like, why have I not heard of this before? And I mean, I write about it, and I can't even. We live in this time where not only do we have, there's something we discovered about technology 50 something years ago, and that is that it doubles in capability on a regular basis. Like computers double in power every 2 years, and other technology doubles every 7 years. And when you double and double and double and double and double, every incremental doubling is that much bigger, right? Mm-hmm. So it took 10,000 years to make your laptop computer. It took 10,000 years of progress to make that computer. In 2 years, it'll be twice as good. So we'll do in 2 years what it took 10,000 years to do before. And then in 2 more years, it'll be twice as good. So it's impossible to keep up with it. And I kind of just embraced that.
So you talk about AI being bigger than electricity. What do you mean by that?
The human body uses 100 watts of power, like a bright light bulb. That's how much power you have. And for the longest time, our standard of living was limited by that. And the only way we could augment it was to add animal power, add an ox or something. And then all of a sudden you had more power. And that's the only way to really create more wealth, is to increase your own productivity. And you're limited to this 100 watts. Then we said, oh, wow, this sunlight that fell on the earth 100 million years ago is now coal. And we can dig that up and we can burn that sunlight. And we can power engines to do all kinds of things. And so everything that used to take physical labor, we tried to build machines to do it. And that got us through, that's the Industrial Revolution. But now, think of that same thing and say, okay, now we have a technology that doesn't relieve our sore muscles. It amplifies our mental ability. And, we're the preeminent species on this planet, not because we're the strongest or fastest or anything, but because we're the smartest. And when you have a technology that effectively makes people smarter, when anybody on this planet can be smarter than anybody who ever lived because they have this technology, that is, we don't even know what that means. They say Leonardo da Vinci was the last man who knew everything. And people don't mean it literally, but they mean that he was the last person to live at a time where you could kind of have mastery of all the different sciences of what was known. Now, nobody knows every 1% of anything. And yet we have these tools that kind of embody it. So if you have a smartphone, you have 50 million times the smarts that Da Vinci had. And now just imagine you add that smarts to everything around you, everything. Imagine, your spoon is checking every bite of food, measuring the calories and checking it for poison or for salmonella. Maybe your toothbrush is telling you if you're coming down with a cold. Like, imagine when you put that kind of smarts in every single thing we have.
That's a great idea for an entrepreneur out there that's listening.
Oh, just look around your house and say, what happens if I add AI to that thing? And you have a business plan right there. Because everything we have is kind of, dumb and needs to be animated with smarts.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's so good. Okay, I'm going to switch conversations a little bit because GLOW is based on 4 C's. It's community, commerce, capital, and content. So one of those 4 C's is capital. And we help our members access the right capital if they're looking for funding. You as an entrepreneur have gone out and you've raised capital and you've actually invested as well. I want to ask you the question, when you've gone out and raised capital, is there any lesson you've learned that's helped you be more successful in raising capital that you could share with our viewers today?
Well, I have done it more times than I can count.
Raising capital?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
do you enjoy
maybe
doing
I can't count very high, but maybe I can't count very high, but I'm sure I've raised 20 rounds of angel investing or angel investments, or not 20 people, but 20 actual rounds or straight up venture. And I would say it never gets any easier. It's always hard. It's always, I don't even know how to say it politely. It's just always so draining, and it takes your whole day. And you go and you make these presentations and you talk about your thing, and then somebody says, well, what about this? And could you answer this question? And you go back and do all this work for that. And then they're like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right, which is fine. I mean, investors here I don't know how many pitches for every one thing so they say no 19 times out of 20 or 95 times out of 100 or whatever it is. And every single round has been hard for me, every one of them. And I can't say, oh, it always works when I do this, or I mean, I do everything probably everybody else is doing. I go through all my contacts on LinkedIn. I reach out to people. I research who funded like companies before, and I reach out to. I mean, I do it. I do all of that. I ask for introductions, and one after the other, and it never gets any easier, really.
So I guess the one thing that I'm hearing, maybe as as you're talking, I think back to the very beginning of failing. It's not really failing. You're learning, and you just never stop. You don't quit, and you have to keep going, especially if you've gone through 20 different rounds or businesses that you've raised capital for. It's a lot of meetings. I'm just curious, on average, how many people would you sit in front of before you'd get a yes? Do you have any idea?
That's a good question. I don't. And of course, you don't even get in front of. So it's a funnel, right? You come up with 100 candidates to reach out to, then you research them, and only 20 of them really fit, and then you reach out to those 20 and you hear back from 4, and then you get a meeting with 2 of them,
right.
And then both of them say no. Like, that's my life story. And then you start over again, and to be clear, it wasn't necessarily 20 companies. Most of my companies require multiple rounds because, in theory, you want to raise as little money as possible because you want to raise as little money as for that to get you to the next milestone, plus just a little bit more, because the last thing you want to do is finally have a successful company you own 0.5% of. Not the last thing, but I mean, you want to sell. Every round you expect you're going to sell at a much higher price. So, people want to hold on to their equity, which I agree with.
Well, I think it's refreshing to hear that. I mean, you're a gentleman that's had you've taken companies to IPOs, you've had several exits, and to hear you say it doesn't get any easier, and you just have to go out and keep pounding the streets, and people are going to continue to say no. But you just got to keep going and you don't quit. I'm curious, though, as we flip and you're the investor, because you've also been an investor in companies, what is it that you look at in companies that you've invested in?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I've never started a company that ended up doing the thing it was started to do. I mean, not even close. You have to morph and morph and morph and morph. Or I do. I mean, but, and then I think to myself, Twitter didn't start off being Twitter, and Uber didn't start being, I mean, none of them, they all change. It's like, because what happens is you try something and it's like, I didn't work very well. But this one thing did kind of, and then you try that and then like, it doesn't really work. But then so I guess it's kind of a plasticity of mind, the kind of person that does just kind of stick with it and is relentless in terms of they don't crumple when it doesn't. Probably the ability to handle setbacks and maintain their energy and positivity.
And that's what you look at in the CEO or the founder of the company. That's interesting.
CEOs, I think, are an irrational lot because they all would say, well, I know most startups fail, but mine won't. Then they have to believe that. I mean, all human progress depends on them being irrational, because if everybody was like, oh, they really knew their real chances of success, how many of us would actually do it?
Exactly.
And so you've got to have this kind of inexhaustible amount of optimism and positivity, but again, not married to your idea. Like, you say, I'm going to figure this out. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to figure it out one way or the other.
Exactly.
And eventually you make it.
Yeah, I think the stats are 85% of companies do not see year 5.
Wow.
So only 15% survive. Okay, Byron, as I knew this would happen, there have been a lot of questions that are coming in. So we're going to go right out to our viewers who've got questions. We're going to start with someone that you actually know, Krista. She's got a question that's coming in. She's asking, regarding the current supply chain issues, is there an AI solution that could be quickly implemented to remedy it? Great question.
No.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I have a business that makes products, and it is taking it on the chin right now. I have container ships in LA Harbor that just sit there for a month. I used to pay $6,000 for a container, and now I pay $40,000 for one. And when you can put 3,000 products on it, at $6,000, that's $2 a product in shipping. At $40,000 is $20. I did that wrong. $3 versus 20. I mean, it just destroys the economics. And Krista is right that the supply chain is an AI problem because it has more components than anybody can keep in their head. It's got all these moving parts, and that's what AIs love, is they can handle data. It was the quickly part that kills the question, because none of that is going to be quick. I don't know how we're going to get out of this one. I mean, we're not. No, I don't think in a year, maybe.
Interesting. Okay. Thanks for that, Krista. Okay, we've got a question that's coming in from Seal from YouTube. Seal's asking the question, one of the assumptions of the increased productive of the lower end, let me re-say this. Okay, one of the assumptions of the increased productivity of the lower end of the employment spectrum is that the salaries keep going up. But in terms of real dollars, those lower spectrum jobs pay significantly less today than 50 years ago, creating significant social challenges like affordable housing. How do we ensure that salaries keep going up?
I would say Syl is exactly right. The challenge is, if you own your time and sell your productivity, you benefit from technology. If you're an attorney who can make a will twice as fast, you get that. If you're selling your time for $15 an hour, and all of a sudden you're made 4 times as productive, you don't get that. You still get $15 an hour, and that's sort of how it works. That's kind of just how it shakes out. Like, if you own the productivity increasing equipment, you get the benefit of it. And if you're wealthy, you're more likely to own the productivity increasing one. The only real solution to that, I think, is through policy. I mean, because you look at it and say, well, that's just kind of how things fall out. So we all came together and formed a government so that we can address those kinds of things. And so that needs to be addressed through policy. You have to kind of fix that systemically, but technology itself won't fix it.
We need
the person who owns the robots generally gets the profit from the robots, and so we have our work cut out for us. I mean, it used to be home ownership in this country became a national priority in the 20s because, interestingly, it was thought that it would keep communism and socialism out of the country, because if everybody owned their own home, they would have a vested interest in the outcome of society. And it is true that few people will fight for a system that they don't have a vested interest in. So I think the big challenge is to make sure everybody feels like they're part of the same system and benefiting from it. They're not necessarily like ecstatic about it, but they're like, okay, I'm at least part of this and I'm benefiting from it. And right now, I get that there's a lot of people who don't feel that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's very dangerous, I think.
I agree. Okay. We've got another question that's come from Rip. Rip is asking, I'm really excited about the idea of driverless cars. Do you think the impact may create an economy where owning a car becomes unnecessary?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, look, I would love to just say, okay, I need to go somewhere and order up a car, and the car just shows up, picks me up, and drops me off where I want to go. And the reason that's kind of cooler than owning a car is it's like, okay, I want a convertible today because the weather's nice. Oh, I got to go pick up a washing machine, so I need a truck. And so you can kind of own every car there is if you have that kind of system. I'm going to, take the Little League team out for pizza. I need a van. And the thing is we won't need parking lots in that world. Like all this land we have, the car will just drop you off and leave and go pick the next person up. And you don't have to like say, okay, let's take half of our downtown and figure out how to make these parking garages so people can store these cars for 9 hours during the day. You just send your car off to go make a living. But the thing is you could buy a car and just heave it into the system and say, okay, well, that's what that will become. It's like, all right, I will invest X $1,000 in this car, and it's going to make me a passive income of Y $100 a month because it's going around hauling people around. And every Saturday it comes back and I clean it and detail it and make it look nice and people rate it. And I mean, that's 100% the world we're coming to.
Right. It's such an interesting time. Okay, so Pat's got a question. Pat's asking, this idea of shift up has an assumption of limitless capacity of human beings. Is that realistic? Aren't there intellectual limits?
Well, that is a fantastic question I've never had before. I think the most underutilized resource in the universe are people. And the reason I think that is, it's like there needs to be a ditch dug here. We don't have a machine to do it. So let's put a person there and tell them they're a ditch digging machine, and then give them a shovel and tell them. And what happens is a mental trap you fall in and say, well, that's probably all that they're capable of doing. And I emphatically do not agree with that. I think virtually everyone is underutilized. I think if you go to people and say, hey, how would you like a more challenging job that you engage with more, that pays more money? I think most people are like, I don't know anybody who says, no, I'm at my limit. Like, I know everything I can know. Don't add a thing. I think most people feel really underutilized. I think almost everybody feels like they're capable of more than they're doing, and they just don't really have an opportunity to. But Pat is right to the extent that perhaps there is some limit eventually, that we're only so smart. Although even then I would say, well, you can put that smartphone with that AI doctor in it at anybody's hand, and they can go to any village where they don't have a doctor, and they are all of a sudden, they didn't go to medical school, but all of a sudden they had the beneficiary of the benefits of 1,000 people who did, and they're able to do something with that. They're able to add value. And so I don't know that there's an upper limit of human plus machine. So I would love to find out. Like, that would be the best problem to have, is it's like everybody is at their capacity doing the most challenging thing that they're capable of doing. I would love that world.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that people would all step up for a greater challenge and more pay, and are capable of it. Rose is asking the question, if AI replaces so many jobs through technology and everyone shifts up, what pressure does that create for our educational system?
That's a fantastic question. I mean, the educational system we have was modeled, it's designed to create factory workers. That's not a conspiracy theory or anything. It was created specifically to create factory workers, and it was modeled after a factory. You have a manager, a teacher, who gives you work. And if you have a question, you raise your hand and you ask your manager. Your manager tells you if you're doing a good job or a bad job. And if you do a good job, then you get a promotion to the next grade. Every now and then a bell will ring and they give you a different thing to do. And then a bell rings, they give you a different thing to do. So, I mean, it's a factory. They build factory. And the emphasis was on creating homogenous workers, people that were all kind of the same. They knew the same things. They could follow instructions and all of that. Unfortunately, that isn't what we need right now. Just the opposite. We need people who can teach themselves new things, people who can judge the quality of their own work themselves. They can say, this is good, or I need to work on this more. Or, I mean, it's all different. Like, we just, and the educational system hasn't changed to keep up with that. You know, I would love to emphasize vocational stuff more and self-teaching more and lifetime learning and all of those things. I don't know if that's going to happen. The university system we have is a 12th century French invention. It's 1,000 years old, and it hasn't changed in 1,000 years. I mean, they still print your diploma in Latin on vellum, and you wear these robes at graduation that they wore 1,000 years ago. And they had tuition and endowments and majors and all of that 1,000 years ago, and it hasn't really change. And so I'm not sure that we have to look at those systems as job training so much. I don't have a good answer to that. When I was a freshman or sophomore in college, I ran for Houston School Board because I've always been really thoughtful and passionate about education. I lost terribly, but I've always been passionate about education and think about it a lot. And I don't know that there's a nice, easy answer to that.
Yeah.
Other than people are so amazing that we kind of all look. If I went back in time to high school, there's only one class I could have taken that would be useful to me now. Do you know what that is?
Workshop.
Typing.
Typing. Ah, yeah.
That's the only thing I could have taken that I would be using now. Everything I know in my job, everything aren't things I learned in school. That's all of us are like that, right? And that's the great thing is it's like you find out, oh my gosh, I need to understand this, and you go to Wikipedia, and then you click on a link, and then it's 3 a.m, and you're like, okay, I kind of understand this a little bit. Luckily, everybody can do that. Like that's not AIs can't do that. Computers can't do anything like that. Nor, in my opinion, will they ever be. And I know ever is a long time.
Right. Well, you're so refreshing, Byron. Your outlook on what the future is here to bring. So as an entrepreneur, I think we have a tremendous opportunity out there, and I'm going to go and start looking at a toothbrush that's smart. I love that idea. Or maybe someone
I get a nickel for every one of them.
Okay, so our time here has come to an end, Byron. You're going to end up going into the VIP room with our premium members, and Vince will be there to meet you. I want to say thank you very much for spending this time with us today. Very insightful, very inspirational, and it's got us all thinking. So thank you very much for being here. And if you're a premium member of GLOW, want to make sure you go ahead and go on over into the VIP room. Remember, next week we've got Pat Pearson here, who's going to be talking about self-sabotage and how we get out of self-sabotage in our personal life and in our career. So please tune in with us next week and hear Mrs. Pat Pearson. And then I'm going to stick around and answer any questions that we've got. And Joseph is actually in the studio with me. So we're going to share some time back and forth together and answer questions that you guys have about GLOW and talk about GLOW and the Business Finishing School and why you should be joining GLOW and tuning into the Business Finishing School and taking their courseware.
Surprise! You didn't know I was going to come up here.
You had arranged all that with Derek, hadn't you?
I did. We kind of chatted while we were.
Why not?
I'm going to just show up and surprise her on the couch. I've always liked that in the talk shows, you know, like when Jimmy Fallon's there,
so
and then all of a sudden somebody
So who would you be? You're my.
Oh, I need to use this though. Okay. So I don't know.
Who would you be? You'd be Mike.
I totally want to be played by The Rock. You know, Dwayne Johnson has to play me. But I've been told by your son that George Costanza is who plays me. So, hey, that was a great conversation.
He's fascinating, isn't he?
I'm really interested in the overlap of the technology and the policy. You know, and he addressed, you know, technology can do a certain amount, but then we have to look at what the policy implications of that are, and obviously there's incredible business opportunity when we look at that.
Yeah. But for people that are scared and worried about the future because they think jobs are going away and their business, there's so many opportunities. Yeah. I think he shed light on that too.
So many.
Yeah. So let's talk about GLOW, what we've got going on.
Wow, we have so many things going on. You know, I really love it when you share with folks about the Business Finishing School.
Yeah.
And it's not that we're just kind of pitching the sponsor of the show, right?
Right.
Like both of us are going through the program. Like
that's exactly right.
We love it.
And we're both entrepreneurs. We've both had businesses before, and we're both learning from the Business Finishing School.
And so I am like you. I didn't go to business school.
Right.
I didn't go to undergraduate with the intention. Yeah, I studied anthropology.
Yeah.
But so, and I don't have time to kind of take off to go back to business school.
Right.
And I certainly, if I had $35,000, give or take.
And that's actually kind of cheap for a business school, MBA.
I kind of feel like I would spend that on the business.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
business finishing school, what I've loved about it, I can do it at my own time. And I've had 5 different businesses, and you'd think, well, why would you even need to do it if you've already run and built other companies? I'm not only am I learning some new things, I'm being reminded of some things that I'm not doing now that I should be doing again.
For me, it's given me constructs of underlying things I knew, but it's given me a construct so I can actually communicate it with other people on my team. And one of the things I love about the business finishing school is that I sign up to take it, but it gives me all these little snippets to share with everybody else on the team. So fundamentally, the whole company has an opportunity to take it, so that we end up with this common vocabulary of how to address some underlying business issues.
Yeah, it's not just for the CEO.
It's not.
It's for everyone that's not just even in a leadership position, but anyone within your company that's helping to make decisions on where you're going. You absolutely, and that's everyone,
one of the things that the business finishing school has, this is my pivot to our next thing. You ready to watch me pivot? Is the accountability sessions, where you can sign up to be held accountable by a group. And we kind of have that in another format.
Right, with Forum.
With Forum. Could you share a little bit about, I know that our wonderful EVP of chapters is kind of taking forums by the horns and getting that going as well as part of the service that premium members can get. Could you talk a little bit about Forum as part of this accountability? Yeah,
so Forum, I've been in Forum now for 25 years, and I've got friends, and they've become all my best friends. And they know me intimately, so they know how I, think, how I work, and they call me out on things that say, Michelle, that's a great idea, but we know you, and we know your past history has shown blah, blah, blah. So,
is that why you never invite them on as guests to this show? They know too much.
Well, and you know what they do? They become almost your board of directors for your business, which is fantastic. But what I've learned about Forum, so in Forum, you learn how to create this very safe space so that you can feel comfortable to share anything you want to, whether it be personal or business, amongst these individuals that you've gotten to know really well. And what I love is that they don't talk from a point of what you should do. They only speak from a point of their own experience. So they never judge. It's not about judging. It's about their own experience of how they've handled certain situations. So, if I've had a disgruntled employee, they don't say, well, Michelle, you should do blah, blah, blah. They say, when this happened to me, this is the way I handled it. And then you sitting there listening to all, 9 other individuals telling their own stories, you gain from each one and you bring it back home to say, okay, based on everything I just heard, this is how I think I'm going to handle it, which is great.
You know what I like about that is that it's fundamentally relational and can't be replaced by AI technology, right? To go back to our speaker, but fundamentally it's saying that you can search easily on Google. Right? What do I do about the disgruntled employee?
Right.
But it's the knowledge of who you are, and it's my own reflective knowledge and experience that can connect my story specifically to you in a way that you might be able to receive that knowledge. And that has to be done in a relational context like Forum.
That's right. I said these, over the 25 years, I've actually been in 3 or 4 forums, and all of them are still some of my best friends because you just share so much. And, on March 3rd through the 6th, we're going to be doing our big Leaders 50 event, and Forum will be we'll be talking about Forum at that event.
That was like burying the lead. Right? When was that? March? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So March 3rd through the 6th, we want to make sure everyone puts it on their calendar and they attend. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas. And it's our inaugural event for GLOW. It's not the inaugural event for the Business Finishing School, but we're going to be combining both organizations together doing this event. Leaders 50 is where we're going to be recognizing the top 50 leaders from around the world. There's going to be a tremendous amount of publicity and PR that comes out of it, a commercial that comes out of it. So the winners that will be selected are going to be based upon a criteria of how they reacted out of 2021 during COVID with their employees, how they responded with their vendors, what kind of innovative ideas they came up with during 2021, during the pandemic. And we're going to be selecting the top 50. Doesn't matter what size of company, large or small, could be public or not public. We're really looking at the leadership and seeing how the CEO responded during this difficult time.
I think that there's probably somebody listening right now who is an entrepreneur or runs a company that is either their company or worked over the last year with a company as a supplier, vendor, partner, that they really think is an amazing example of how to respond, how the right way of responding to the pandemic and the pivots that were needed to make that work. And we're hoping that you who are listening right now, let us know about those companies. That they may be in Omaha, Nebraska right now, and the national press doesn't tend to cover the businesses in Omaha, Nebraska, and we want to make sure that Leaders 50 has the reach into all parts of the United States, of Canada, of Mexico. We're talking to partners of ours around the world to identify just amazing entrepreneurs that really did right by their business and by their community over the last year.
Right, and anybody can be you can nominate yourself, or somebody in the company can nominate you. So, yeah, it's great. So March 3rd through the 6th, we're going to be recognizing those people. We're also going to have a tremendous amount of educational content. Kevin Harrington will be here doing a pitch off so that you could pitch Kevin if you wanted to, who was one of the original sharks from Shark Tank. We've got some really interesting speakers that are coming on board. So it's going to be chock full of content. It's in Dallas, Texas.
As it should be, right? That's where we are right now.
Easy to fly in and out of.
Easy to fly, Southwest, American, all in and out. You know, one of my favorite speakers is on the docket with.
Yes, who would that be?
He'll be promoting his brand new book, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is Vince Pacente, who, if you've come to one of our chapter meetings in your community, you've probably had an opportunity to meet with and hear Vince speak. A lot of the time he talks about his book, The Ant and the Elephant, which is a phenomenal bestseller. But the sequel, I know it's not really called a sequel, it's going to stand on its own, but the sequel to that book is out. You can pre-order it now, and we'll be one of the first places that he gets on the big stage to talk about it.
Yeah, he'll be talking about his new book called The Earthquake, which is really where the rug gets pulled out from underneath you, and you're like, whoa.
But that never happens to any of us.
Yeah, so think about this past year, and it's all about what you do to get back and get right, and it's not about getting back, it's about getting right. So and doing those pivots and how you do it successfully. So it's an interesting book, and based on personal history too.
Well, I had an opportunity to read an advanced copy of it, and can't recommend it more. It's really,
it's gonna be great.
I read all of this stuff in the press about responding to COVID, and I'm like, oh, that's not really how the brain's going to do it. Like, that's not really how the brain works, and it takes somebody. And, you know, Kevin and Vince are just two of the speakers that we're working with to bring in. There's some amazing people.
Yeah, we've got Ford Sakes coming in. He's going to be doing a hot seat. Ford is a marketing guru. He's going to put companies in a hot seat, review their websites on the spot, and say, you need to be looking at making this change, that change. So it's all free. I mean, as an attendee, you can have that opportunity.
Yeah, if you've got the guts to do that.
Yeah.
I could never just sit up there in
it's
front
great,
of everybody. I know, it's like
free information.
It's like a $10,000 consulting gig right there, and it'll be available to everybody. It's amazing.
We're also going to do this thing that's called Lessons from the Edge, which I'm really excited about. We're going to be bringing in entrepreneurs that have basically had, you know, a near-death experience with their business. So people that have, you know, built companies worth $500 million and being, given a check almost to sell, and then crashing and filing Chapter 11. And, stories where people have had hundreds of thousands of dollars taken out of their business accounts and what they did to rectify it when the bank wouldn't get behind it and guarantee it. We're going to hear from people that sold businesses that went bankrupt and bought them back, and all the issues so many great stories from entrepreneurs, and it's all about learning from their experience, from their experiences, so that either A, you don't get into those situations, or B, how do you get out of them if you find yourself in them? So
this is going to be an incredible event, March of next year, for GLOW members.
Yes.
Participants
and business finishing school,
and the leaders 50. I'm really excited for our premium members and all of the things that we have planned for them in March.
As a premium member, you're going to have VIP access to meet all the speakers. Backstage, you get a VIP. You get a discount for attending. You're not going to be paying the normal fee if you're a premium member. And, you get the VIP treatment in front of the line, front of the room, that type of thing as well.
So that's what I wanted you to kind of talk about as we, look at the time.
Which we're at the end.
We really shouldn't wait till March to become a premium member.
No, you should do it now. And we
Why?
are at the end, Joseph.
Oh, we are?
We're at the top of the hour, so.
Okay.
So thanks.
You and I could keep talking.
I know, but thanks for coming on like this.
We should
nice
just
little
do this for
surprise.
fun.
All right, so for those that are still tuning in, be sure and join us next week when we have Pat Pearson here talking about self-sabotaging. It's going to be a fascinating hour with her, and you can get your questions in early to us too. So look forward to seeing you. Until then, stay safe and God bless. Bye-bye.